Hello, everybody. This is Debbie Eno from Teacher Success Coach with another episode of the Female Empowerment Group. We'll be talking to women regarding what triggers them to become empowered. Because normally for us women, there's always something that triggers us because we could be in a situation for a very long time and we just remain in that situation until one day something triggers and we decide, you know what, we can no longer stay in that situation. We need to do something to empower ourselves enough to give us the confidence enough to move away from that situation. So I've got another woman with us who is going to share her journey as to what are the triggers in relationship to she becoming empowered and standing in her power and doing her thing. Right. Welcome, 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 Jessica. Thank you very much for accepting the offer to come online to share your journey with us. I'm really appreciative of that. Tell us about yourself, tell us where you come from, and tell us about what started you off on your journey.
Thank you. Thanks for having me too. I am currently based in Boston, Massachusetts in the USA, and I am originally from New York. I have always been in life coaching in some capacity in my life, like whether I started getting coached very young and started coaching also very young, but I work with women who are healing and understanding and getting out of emotional and narcissistic abusive situations.
Thank you for that. It's interesting because a lot of women are in those situations and they're also gaslighted as well in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you support women to get out of those situations, especially if they're in a narcissistic situation and being gaslighted as well?
I think that one of the big things that I do is a lot of people come to the early sessions or like the beginning and say, this is what's happening. I think it's my fault. Or like, this is what's happening. And here's all the things I'm trying to do to change and like nothing's working. And, or like, this is what's happening and I don't know what's wrong with me. And it's really on me to say like, here are the unhealthy dynamics that are happening based on what you're sharing with me. And it doesn't sound like this is their reality. So in a way, like help them begin to ungaslight themselves. And a lot of times it can feel like, a lot of times it's probably the first time that they're being validated, but also it is quite validating to have somebody be able to see the patterns and almost finish your sentences when you have felt so misunderstood. So I think it's just important to be that space that can like listen and hear and validate, but also call it out when it's not, when they're not the abusive one, or they're not the problem, or they're not the one that's making this, into this thing. Like most women I found will overcompensate in all these ways and try and do all these things to like make a relationship work instead of just taking that step back and saying like, it is not working. And that this is unhealthy and I'm not okay. And and so I try and help them see like what's actually there. A lot of us don't want to acknowledge that it's abuse. It's hard to acknowledge that it's abuse.
Yeah. Thank you. The thing about it is, although women might see it in terms of, the person is making them doubt themselves, gaslighting them, etc., because they're always in that position of caring and trying to fix, they feel that they have to try to fix it, even at their cost. And I think that's where some of the challenges lie. As women, we feel that we are responsible for everybody's emotions.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. What are the triggers that started you off to go on this?
Well, for me, it has always been, so I grew up in an abusive home. And so like I had all these stories about who I was and how I show up in the world and what that means and what that looks like. And I went through like all my life thinking like I was essentially the problem because I'm the one who grew up in the abusive home. So I'm the one that's all messed up, and I'm the one in all the therapy and then like, as that manifests in relationships, I start to realize like that's actually an excuse for other people not to do their own work and to treat me poorly because they can easily blame this big umbrella of abuse.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
that they weren't a part of, that they weren't in, that they didn't know me during, that they weren't part of the healing. And
yeah,
so I had gotten out of a marriage with somebody who was extremely toxic. And then after healing from it, after taking time off from dating, got into another relationship in time, probably about 2 years time. And it was very emotionally abusive. And I didn't even know what that was really in those terms until I was in it. And then that was probably the trigger that made me realize, like, I want to end this pattern, because my last relationship was narcissistic abusive. This one is emotionally abusive, highly emotionally abusive. It could be physically abusive if I stay. I have this young child that I don't want to take on this patterning, and I have this whole history. So I have to do something about it. Otherwise, I'm going to keep doing this, and I don't want to keep doing this. Like once I started to see the pattern and realize how hard it was to leave, that's when I realized how many other people are out there that don't see the pattern, can't get out of it, because maybe they don't have, maybe they just don't like, once for me personally, I started to feel the same way I felt when I was growing up. And that's how I knew something was up. And that led me to Google to try and figure things out, whereas someone else might be blaming themselves and they don't know all those things. So, I mean, but I think like I've had a lot of triggers in life, and it's usually from like me feeling in my own way and then having to figure out how to get out in some way.
Thank you. One of the plus for you is you are very much aware. So due to your awareness, okay, I don't want this pattern to continue. But sadly, some women are not aware, and they stay in those situations, where they're being gaslighted, and they're doubting themselves as to, is it me? It must be me. So one of the plus for you are very much aware. And in this case, when some women are not aware, how can you make them become aware of those things?
I think it's in my work or in coaching work, something we can look at is the story that we tell ourselves. And so if you're always telling yourself that you don't deserve better, or that this is okay, if you have all those rationalizations of why it's okay, then we're not getting out of that story. And I think a big thing is like because I don't want to invalidate people's stories. Like their stories are true, and a lot of time the story has happened, but at the same time, we don't have to live from that story. And we can almost like write a new story. We could create a new story. And so sometimes what I do with people is I help them see, like, if this is the narrative that we're living, then of course you're not going to leave, and you're not going to get out. You're not going to feel like you can, right? You're not even going to want to ungaslight yourself, because that doesn't support the story.
Yeah. That is so very true, though, because we do tell ourselves so many stories. And it is true, we need to write another story, because we are the writer of our stories. So it's so often that's something I also encourage women to do, to write yourself another story, change the ending of that story. Because too often we have the ending just as we have the middle of that story, which doesn't serve us. So It is so important that women are reminded that they are in control of their story. And the more you tell yourself your story, the more it becomes your reality, because you keep on telling yourself, and there comes a time you cannot separate your story from reality, because they all look the same.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Another question is, what do you think educational institutions could do to empower young women?
I think that educational institutions don't necessarily teach about domestic violence, or even validate domestic violence, or that emotional abuse is domestic violence, and that verbal abuse is also domestic violence. Like, a lot of my work is like I remember, I'll take a step back. When I was a kid, I used to feel like the words and the emotional abuse was always so much stronger, even though I didn't have those words, than the physical abuse, because like the physical abuse, the pain goes away, but the verbal abuse, it doesn't. And same with the emotional. And so I think that a lot of schools could train and teach people what domestic violence is, and maybe even give it a safe space. So if somebody is seeing that their mother is being abused at home or that there is verbal abuse, that they have a place to go that would validate that and help them and provide support rather than having this kid feel helpless. What that kid does is they grow up feeling like this is just what it is, or I need to appease the abuser in some way, and so I think that there's a lot of support that we could be giving. I think it's a scary place for schools to tap into that space, but I see it the same as like sex education. We are setting people into the world that have no idea of what to do, and like things can happen and we end up in these situations, and more knowledge and more help and more support would help probably foster really healthy or healthier children that are going to be adults.
God. Yeah, that is so, so important what you've just said in relationship to schools, supporting young
Yeah.
people in relationship to what might have been going on at home. This is the first time I've actually heard this, and this is so true, because a lot of because I've seen all of these things, but there's nowhere to put it. So it comes out in the behavior in the classroom. And then you would be saying, oh, that child has a behavior issue. No, the child doesn't have a behavior issue. The child has been exposed to so many things, and the child don't know how to regulate their emotion. Oh my goodness, that is such an eye-opener, is an aha moment for me. That is so very true. Because where do they put it when they come with it?
Yeah.
It goes out to the behavior. Yeah. Yeah. And schools really do need to find a safe space for them. Yeah, that's very, very true. Thank you for that. Sorry, I've got such hay fever.
Okay.
Right, what do you think, what do you believe to be the most significant barriers to women empowerment?
I think there's a lot of things, but one thing that I think I can touch on that has come up at least today in my coaching calls is distraction, and like, which then I think leads people to devalue the importance of it. I believe that like we need to put time and effort into our own empowerment, like what we talked about, the story, we talk about like ungaslighting yourself, educating yourself on some of the things that you're going through, right? Pursuing those passions, right? We can have all the distractions in the world. I'm a single parent. If I want to, I can blame everything on that. I'm a single mom. I don't have time for this. I need it. It doesn't mean that I can't like prioritize. Like I would be lying to you if I said I had like a very warm social life. I don't. I am a single parent, so I'll use that there. But I put my time and my effort into like my training, in my coaching, in my offerings, in my podcast, in the things that make me feel good, in the close circle that I do have, and into giving my 6-year-old a life that feels like a bit vibrant, of like being able to go to these play dates and being able to like go to her school events. And it's almost like putting the distractions and the excuses aside to show up in those places, and then realize like that we cannot do it all. Like we cannot do it all. Like if all my ducks were in a row, then something would always be at fault. But I try and think about, what do I need to do in a day to feel like I am in like my personal integrity? Like what makes me feel like the best me? And for me, it's usually like a walk. So I walk my kid to school every day. So that walk is important. Like it is, even when it's raining, it's important for us both to like go and walk together. It's about 15 minutes of a walk. I make sure that I go to the gym the majority of the days of the week, because that's like my me time. And I also need space to like align my schedule throughout the day. And there's probably some other things in there. Like I feel better when my hair is done. I feel better when my nails are done. And those are like tiny things that to somebody else, they might not care. It might not even matter to them. They might need like a full breakfast, and they might need like a shower in the morning. I just have a different set of things. And I think it's important for everyone to figure out what their specific set of things are that make you feel like you, and that make you feel like you are here, you're here and you're showing up and you're proud of yourself in the day.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Actually, I would then attach that to self-love and self-care.
Yeah.
which is, which is valuable. And as women, we sometimes neglect those factors because we're busy showing up for everyone else and we don't show up for ourselves.
Right.
Okay, thank you for that. How do you empower yourself and other women in your space?
I think like part of it is what I was just saying about figuring out what your goalposts are, almost like what you need to do in order to feel your best you. If I don't do that, then I'm not showing up with integrity to the people that I work with. But I also try and be extremely reliable for the people that I support and work with. When we have a scheduled session, I'm at the session. When we, if I say I'm going to get back to you on email, like even if I don't get back to you that day, I always tell them like, this happened, I'll get back to you tomorrow. I think having a support group that is reliable and that we can count on is really important. And I think I empower people by being like very real with them too. Like I wish I could sit here and say like, oh, I hang out with my friends every week. That wouldn't be authentic. I see my friends maybe once every 2 weeks and it's like one friend, not 5. Like it is what it is, but there's all these other things that I think are higher priority. And for somebody else, it might be like, that is their high priority. But just figure out what those are and put things in like appropriate buckets so that we can feel empowered even in one space out of our life, and doesn't have to be all of them at once. But like, it's like, I think it shows a lot of pride when someone's like, you know what, I did a really good job at work today, and then they can celebrate that. And then maybe like bring those gifts into other areas of their life.
Thank you. I think that's quite nice, actually. Yes, I am all for celebrations. I think it's important that we constantly celebrate ourselves, and we don't do that enough. We really don't do that enough. So thank you. Right. What are some of the obstacles do you feel that we still encounter that is preventing women from breaking through the glass ceiling? What are some of the obstacles that are, preventing us from doing that?
I think that, so this is probably like a bit of a controversial thing to say, because there are a lot of resources out there that do say that like women make less than men and we're in a different place, and all these things. And like, so there's truth to that. I also think we don't have to subscribe to that belief all the time, and that we can carve out these spaces. Like you were telling me about what you do before this, and you're an educator and you also do this and you have these other groups. So like you've carved out these spaces that you can exist in and be the expert in. And I think that we don't have to it's not just about our job, and it's not just about the other things, but like, I think we have the ability to still create. And obviously there's countries out there that it's not as easy and not as free to be able to do that. But especially for the people that live in the UK or the people that live in the United States, like women do have the ability to really like begin to carve that out and to begin to figure out where their voice is loudest and what they want to do. And they want to, get the skill set for, or they want to foster their education, whatever that might be, they can do. And I just think it's important to like allow yourself to feel that and notice what blocks are inside of you, because it might be a block of believing that you can't do it. Oh, you muted yourself.
Yeah, thank you. It is so very true. Women have to decide which voice within them is the loudest. And that's what they need to make sure that actually shine through. Because I think that sometimes, because something dumb us down, we fail to realize, or we fail to identify the loudest voice that is coming from within us. And instead, we don't seem to have any voice coming from within us, because we allow the dominance of society to dumb that down. And it's important that we need to find it to start celebrating it. It's very, very true. It's very, very true. Thank you for that. What can we do as women? What can we as women do to empower young women? So where I work, the majority of young people are young women, the courses I teach. So what would you be able to do? What do you think that we should do to empower these young women? Some of them confidence is zero. Some of them self-esteem is zero. What can we do to ensure that we empower them so that they could actually stand in their power and
Mhm.
own their space?
I think so. I think a lot of things, but I think one thing that we are in control of at least is like honoring like where how we are showing up around them.
Yeah.
You know, I have a 6-year-old daughter, 6.5-year-old daughter, and she's the type of kid that is like vibrant and loud, and she's the silliest person in the room. And I often think about like that little light that she has. And of course, there's times where that light dims and she's frustrated, and she like I'm divorced from her dad, so she has a lot of stuff and shit, in there. But I also want to be the parent that like if she's dancing in the middle of the street and wants to like just do this, like that I get up and do it with her, that she doesn't feel shamed. Like the other day she was doing this like monkey bars thing, and she was like climbing up this thing and like got down, and I just was like, I'm going to go and show her that like I'm going to try and do it with her so that she
Yeah.
feels like empowered and like good. And she felt so proud. She was like, "Oh my God, mommy, what are you doing?" And I think like just finding places where like you can like be in that space with them,
Yeah.
and just like, because like the whole world is going to tell them that dancing in the street is silly and that they shouldn't do
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
if their role model, if their mother, if their sister, if there's someone that they're close to is doing it,
Yeah.
then maybe, or like even just like empowering it and cheering it on and being like, "You go,
Yeah.
girl," then we're doing it. Like my daughter does not have a singing voice, and she fully thinks she's going to be a singer on a stage one day. It is like so funny. It's like she thinks that she has this voice and it's of like Whitney Houston, and she literally sounds like a bird. And I'm like, yes, you are. Yes, you are. Like it's gonna, if you want that, I believe in it. Like maybe one day
Yeah.
it will just pop. But like
Yeah.
I just think like not telling them it's not gonna happen. Like, and I see
Yeah.
that around her school with boys and girls, of people just
Yeah.
like be quiet, don't express yourself, your feelings are too big. And I think it's just important to like work on yourself enough so that you can exist in those spaces with them without
Yeah.
the fear of judgment.
Yeah, thank you. That is so wonderful, right? Because it doesn't matter what it doesn't matter what her singing like. Nobody,
Mhm.
there are no barriers. She wants to sing. It's like I said to my students. I said, hello. I said, you guys need to sing and dance. But Miss, I cannot dance. I said, of course you can. I said, I'm not saying to you you're the best dancer in the world or the best singer in the world, but I'm saying to you, dance and sing, celebrate, do what
Mhm.
you want to do. It is okay. Nobody should be stopping you. There's where you're at with that. And
Yeah.
it's fantastic that you're allowing your daughter, you're celebrating it with your daughter. I think that's brilliant. The nice part is you go in that space with them. That's fantastic. I love that. I really love
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah,
really love
well, and
that.
like that goes along with like generational trauma, generational healing.
Yeah.
With all the triggers that I've had and the stuff that I've gone through, I've always thought about, but I need to work on this, because if me working on it prevents her from experiencing it one day,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
all the work I do, then it's all worth it. Then like, and
Yeah.
I do believe that like maybe
Yeah.
it connects with me, and maybe this little girl is going to learn
Yeah.
all these new patterns, and then she's going to like influence her friends and like, or be that person. And so
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
think it kind of comes back to like our own humility too, of being able to dance in the street, but also being able to like look at our own stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's wonderful. It really is good because not only increases your confidence, it actually makes you feel that, okay, I'm okay to do that. It's fine. There is no issue with that. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you. Well, and the final question is, what 3 suggestions can you give to women to empower themselves? Because some women would love to empower themselves and they know that they need to increase their confidence. They know that they need to do something, but they don't know what to do or how
Mhm.
to do it. What would you say to women? What 3 things would you say to them?
I would say, one, journal. Start a journal if you don't have one, and just spend some time writing, even if it's like a sentence a day,
Yeah,
like, or even if it is a full page, but like
yeah,
spend some time with your own thoughts and getting to know them, and to like giving yourself a space to speak.
Yeah.
And second would be, if you are in an abusive relationship or a domestic violence situation or with a narcissist, to start educating yourself on the signs. It can be really empowering to see the signs, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. So once you see that like somebody, like throwing something next to you and not at you is abuse, then maybe you will start to see more signs, and then obviously feel more justified in your feelings of leaving. And I think third would be decide which things you need in a day or a week that will make you feel like you. Like if it means going and get your hair blown out 3 times a week, and that literally changes how you look and feel about yourself, then go do it, because then you'll be showing up into all these places of your life in a different way. If it is going for a run a day or a walk or getting a special coffee, like just really think about the things that make you feel like you, and try and make it a promise to yourself to do it. And if you don't, like, have consequences that get you that thing. So for example, say your promise is like, I'm gonna go out for a run 4 times a week because I know it makes me feel so much better in my body and my mind, and like I feel so calm. And then week by week, you're getting out once. Look at, okay, did I overextend this promise, or am I just distracting myself away from it? Because then the consequence might be, okay, well, then you have to go out for a walk. It's like, but take the time for yourself, like figure out how to help yourself get there, because that you showing up for yourself means that you're going to show up for everybody else and everything else in just a more authentic way.
Yeah, thank you. I like that. The showing up for yourself, because too often we don't show up for ourselves. Too often we show up for everybody else. Everybody else gets us except us. And it is so important. That connects yet again to self-love and self-care, something we need to give ourselves a lot more than we do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you got anything else you want to say to us before because I'm conscious that you have to leave in the next 2 minutes.
I have to get my daughter in 2 minutes. This is the joy of being a single mom, is like, you always have to be somewhere else. Well, I guess the only thing I'll say is, so I have a podcast called the Relationship Recovery Podcast, by Jessica Knight, which is my name. I have a lot of validation type of podcasts in there about emotional and abuse, domestic violence, and narcissistic abuse. If you are feeling like you're in that space, just go start listening to it. It's free, and it's a resource, and I put a lot of time into it. I've interviewed a lot of guests. So if you need validation, that's a great resource for you to go to, and just to start putting together some pieces. You could always reach out to me too. So my email is jessica@jessicaknightcoaching.com. But I think that if I was going to share anything, I think that would be the best place to start.
Yeah. Thank you. I like the thing in terms of, there's sometimes we tend to look outside for the validation, and in turn, what we should be really looking at is what's internal that we do right, that we need to validate ourselves for. And that's very, very important. Thank you very much for that, Jessica. Thank you very much, Jessica. Thank you, Facebook audience, for tuning in. Jessica, you're going to leave your link in the page so that you could actually go onto our podcast and listen to some of the podcast, especially if you guys are being gaslighted or you're in a relationship that is narcissistic, because some people don't even know they're in a narcissistic relationship until they start listening to someone and think, oh my goodness, this is it. Oh my goodness, they gaslighted me. And that is so easy to remember. It doesn't have to be a male-female relationship. It could be a friend. It could be a siblings, any of these people, because some people just gaslight you and some people just are narcissists. It doesn't have to be in a sexual relationship. It could be any kind of relationship, parents, children, etc. Thank you very much, Jessica. Is there anything else?
No, I think that's it. But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for accepting the offer, and I'm really grateful for that. Have a fantastic evening, night.
You
Take
too.
care, people. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.